This is Farris Khan with Smash the Numbers. Today, we're going to go over how important the Texas game is to Michigan's season. I am going to do some probabilistic analysis. We're going to use some data from Phil Steele. We're going to go through this game by game and really kind of start at the fact that Michigan beat Fresno State. So that's good. 100% probability that we won that game. Now we are in a Texas game where the probability is way less than 50% that we are going to win the game according to the line. I use Phil Steele analysis that he did to try to figure out when there is a favorite and an underdog, what is the probability that an underdog wins the game? All right. So then what I do is I actually break the season up into 3 4-game segments. And I'm going to tell you what Michigan needs to do in each of those 4-game segments in order to make the playoffs. And then finally, I'm going to give a prediction on whether Michigan is going to make the playoffs or not, and really what they need to do in order to make that happen. All of that's coming up right now. All right. Ultimately, what we're trying to do here is figure out how important that Texas game is. All right. So, what I'm going to do is I've taken an Excel spreadsheet, I've done some probabilistic analysis on it, and I have created an image, which is what you see here. What we're going to do is we're going to go through this game by game, right up above here. And we're going to go through the probability that Michigan will win each of those games. We will also go over what that means in terms of how do you sort of convert a line into probability. And then directly on this side here, we have the big 3 games. So the way that schedule kind of lines up, Michigan has 3 games where they are an underdog, maybe a significant underdog in, and then all of the other games, they are at least what I'm calling a 74% or higher probability that they're going to win each of those games. So, okay, so first let's look at the chart that I have here you're kind of directly above me here. They won the Fresno State game, so 100% chance that they're going to win that game because they already won it. The Texas game is a 7.5-point spread. I'm using Phil Steele analysis. He did some analysis from 1997 to 2022. I'm not sure if this has been updated or not. I'll take a look, but there's a large enough sample size that this should be credible data. If we look at this, we see a 7.5-point spread means the probability of winning is a 26%. So that's on the chart on the right. All right. So if that's the case, we can also kind of compute the average number of losses as the season goes along. So now you kind of see why maybe I'm splitting the season into 4 segments. In the first segment, we have 2 relatively easy games. Fresno State already happened, and Arkansas State, not Arkansas, Arkansas State. I'm putting that as a 98% probability that Michigan's going to win. There is no line that I mean, there may be a line that's out there, but there's no line that I thought was credible. So I'm just going to say that's a 98% chance of winning. The USC game has a line of a 9.5. That line was higher, and it kind of dropped to that number because USC had a very good game. They beat LSU. Michigan, to some, had a shaky game, and because of that, that line has dropped to 9.5. So in those first 4 games, Fresno is maybe not a cupcake, but 2 relatively easy games and 2 harder games. All right. Now, my thought process is if Michigan wants to make it to the playoffs, they need to win 3 out of those first 4 games. Okay. Then we get to the second part of the schedule where we have Minnesota at Washington, at Illinois, and then Michigan State. Um, there are lines on 2 of those games. Washington 9.5, Michigan State 21.5. 9.5 translates to a 26% chance that Washington would win that game. And then a 21.5 is a 5.5 chance that Michigan State would win that game. So the reverse of that is you take 100% and you subtract it off, and you see that although at Washington might be hard, that's going to be a tough environment. Um, Michigan needs to win out. They need to win all 4 of those games. It is in a good part of the schedule too. Hopefully the team is gelling, offensive line's gelling, the quarterback position, et cetera, et cetera. So it's okay if they take a loss in the first 4. That's my view. In the next 4, they need to win out. And then we have the last 4 games of the season. 2 easy games, which are at Indiana and at Northwestern, and then 2 really tough games, home to Oregon and then at Ohio State. Okay. Win probability, the Oregon game, that line actually was around a 3. Now it's 3.5. So a 3.5 translates to a 35% chance of winning that game. Ohio State's now a 10-point spread. It was less than double digits before. I think it was 9.5. 10-point spread is a 26% chance of winning the game. So actually, the probability of winning Ohio State as it stands right now is the same as winning Texas. Same exact number. Okay. So now what are we doing? All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at this right side here, directly over here. And what we see is the probability to win, the same probabilities that you see: Ohio State 26%, Oregon 35. Texas 26%, Oregon 35%, and OSU 26%. Now, let's say that Michigan can win out. They can win every other game except for the big 3. If that's the case, then what we're looking at is the expected losses after Texas is 0.74 losses. So close to 1, but not quite 1 because they have a chance to win the game. Then you've got Oregon at after that game 1.39 losses, and then you've got after OSU 2.13. You'll notice 2.13 is pretty close to 2. And I believe that if Michigan can make it through the season with only 2 losses, they are in the playoffs. I think there's a very high probability of that. All right. So what does that mean in terms of the probability of winning 1 out of those games? So Texas, 26% chance. I'm still looking at that chart right there. Texas, 26% chance to win that game. The combination of Texas and Oregon winning 1 out of those 2 games, I'm putting that at a 52% chance. And then the combination of Texas, Oregon, and OSU winning 1 out of those 3 games, I'm putting that as a 65% chance. So all I'm doing is I'm taking the odds, I'm translating that into a probability of winning the game. Then I'm sort of stacking the probabilities and trying to figure out of those 3 games, can they go 1 in 3? What's the probability of that? It is a 65% chance as it stands right now. Now, if they do manage to win Texas, okay, what's the probability of splitting the other 2 games? Well, 35% chance for Oregon, and then a 52% chance if after the OSU game. So the probability is over 50-50 if they beat Texas that they can at least split Oregon and OSU. All right, so now I'm going to kind of talk about how really answer that question, how important that Texas game is now that we know the probabilities. Okay, so the Texas game is certainly important, but I don't want you to be upset if they lose. The chances of winning this are kind of like the chances of an average Major League Baseball pitch or batter getting a hit. Uh, it's not likely to happen, but hopefully it'll happen. Let's put it that way. So now I do think that the line or sort of the expectations, Michigan really didn't show too much in game one. They won the game 30-10, which is just fine, not a problem at all. But for some reason, I think a lot of people are thinking that because of the quarterback position, because Texas has so much experience, um, that they are going to win this game by more than 7.5 points. My personal prediction at the moment is that Michigan has a shot at this. I do believe they can hold Texas to under 20 points, but I think that it'll be tough for Michigan to get to be over 20 points. Let's see. I would see optimistically Michigan winning this game, something like 22-19 is what I would say. Okay. But realistically, we're talking about a 26% chance of winning the game. All right. So given that, don't panic if they lose. Instead, kind of think that, okay, got to beat USC, got to beat Washington, and need to be 7-1 heading into Oregon. And then Oregon becomes a de facto playoff game. But even if they lose to Oregon, they still have one more mulligan, and that is Ohio State. So this is kind of an interesting thing. I would say the pivotal game in the season is Oregon for sure. That's the game that, regardless of what happens with Texas, um, winning Oregon will put them in the top four. Will give them a positioning to make it to the Big Ten title game. Losing to Oregon, if they beat Texas and then they beat Oregon, that's what's on the line. Now, if they lose to Texas, they will be a rung lower. So now we're talking about in the top 8, in the top 10, somewhere in there. But they beat Oregon and they're right back into the playoffs. They lose to Oregon, they're probably on the bubble or out unless they can beat Ohio State. So either way, I think that either to get from being a bubble team to kind of being in the playoffs, if they lose to Texas, or if they beat Texas, going from a top team in the Big Ten to sort of locking in a position in the title game and almost making maybe that Ohio State game superfluous because maybe they end up playing twice in a row or something to that effect. So that's what it means. I would value the Oregon game much more than the Texas game. Also, Oregon game is a conference game, so that's another thing to kind of factor in here. So I think in general, if we kind of look at Michigan's chances, I think the probability that they can get to a 2-loss season, it's maybe less than 50-50. But if you told me that they are going to win out except for their big 3 games, I would put it at more than 50-50. In fact, I have a specific number for that. That's 65%. So if they can take care of business with the other 8 remaining games, because they already won Fresno State, those last 3 games, if they go 1-2, they're in, and the chance of going 1-2 is 65%. All right. Hopefully you can take a screenshot of that spreadsheet that I had because I have all those details in there. Let me know what you think of the analysis. If you're into numbers like this, let me know how I can improve this as well. Thank you. And remember to smash the numbers. Please like and subscribe.